Okay, I think we will start in another 5 minutes. Okay, I can see some familiar names here. I believe most of you are Taylor students or alumni. Okay, good morning, everyone. I think we just start first, even though you only have about 11 participants right now. Okay, I'm expecting that going to have 40 participants. Okay, but it's okay. I will just start. Okay, so welcome to the first day of the 2-day online course designing with Shape Grammar. Okay. My name is Muhammad Adib Ramdi and I'm a lecturer in the School of Architecture, Building and Design, Taylor's University. I think some of you you might know me because I think most of you here are alumni or current students. Okay, so I'm not sure, I can't remember which one is alumni and which one is current student. All right. Okay, so basically, first, I'm just gonna brief you, okay, on the what we are going to do for this 2-day session, 2-day course. Okay, let me open the slide. Okay, so if first of all, if anything goes wrong, for example, like you cannot see that I'm changing the slide. or I'm talking about something that doesn't appear in the slide. So maybe you can just inform me. Okay. Feel free to disturb me anytime if you have any question, if you want to say anything. Right? Don't just keep quiet, because this is an online session. It's a bit difficult if I am the only one talking. So if anything goes wrong, or if you have any question, okay, so feel free to just disturb me, right? Okay, so right, so basically today is the first day of this designing with Shape Grammar online course, right? So today is just the introduction to Shape Grammar. Right. So what is the potential area of application for this Shape Grammar? And then end of the day, I'm going to give you an icebreaking exercise that you need to complete and submit to the online portal Times. Okay, and then tomorrow, tomorrow is I would say the main the main thing. Okay. So only tomorrow that I'm going to show you the step-by-step process of producing and using the Shape Grammar technique, right? And at the end of the day, there will be a simple Shape Grammar exercise that you need to submit as well. Okay. Even though the timing of this online session is 2 hours, but I believe it's going to take shorter than that. Okay, it's not going to be full 2 hours. It's going to be shorter than that. Okay, but I expect to have some discussions, or if you have any question, you can just ask me any question. Right. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so I actually came across this Shape Grammar method or technique, I would say, when I did my master in architecture. So last time when I was a student, our Bachelor of Architecture is considered as part 2. So to become a lecturer, so we have to do a master. Okay, then we can become a master, a lecturer. So I did research during my master study, okay, in the area of Shape Grammar, okay, and that's why I want to share with you today, because I think I think probably none of you have heard about this technique, Shape Grammar, okay, but actually has been around since 1970s. It's already like 40 years ago, but probably it's not so popular. But I think I found it's actually very helpful, okay, especially in design. Okay, I think I need to allow. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so but for today's session, basically it's not only open to architecture students or alumni, but also open to public. And when we promote this course, basically I mentioned that this technique is suitable for bigger area of design, not only architecture. So it can be used in graphic, pattern design, even product design. So for my presentation today, I'm just going to make it more general. Okay. So, but maybe the examples given would be more inclined towards architecture, but I will try to make it general and try to relate as much as possible to other areas of design as well. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's look at the general overview or general definition of shape grammar. Okay, so shape grammar is actually a method that can be used to produce design, particularly in the field of art and architecture. Okay, so so basically when we say art and architecture, especially art, is quite broad. Okay, so to make it more specific, the area of art includes something like graphic art, like digital painting, okay, decorative art, for example, patterns and abstract art, or it can be sculpture. Okay, it can be a sculpture. So at the end of the day, you found that this technique can be used for both 2D and 3D arts. Okay, so it's not only limited to 2D drawing, okay, or 2D object. You can also use the shape grammar technique for 3D object or 3D art or design. Okay, and for architecture, basically, you can use this technique to create plans for your building, and also to get idea to produce forms of your building. Okay, and it can be more than that. I've seen my previous students, they use this technique, shape grammar technique, to produce facade design for her design studio project. Okay, so I mean the application of this shape grammar is I would say limitless, right? So it's up to you how you want to use it. Okay. And on top of that, actually, this technique, shape grammar technique, has been used in product design as well. Okay, there are a few researchers done on this shape grammar technique to study about a certain product. For example, like a chair back design. Okay, I'll get to that later. Bottle design evolution. Okay, so you know Coca-Cola, right? Coke. The bottle design has evolved, I think, from like maybe 100 years ago. Okay, so there was a study on that to track this evolution using shape grammar, and many other applications, okay, of shape grammar in product design. Okay. Okay, so before we proceed with the shape grammar, the detailed definition of shape grammar, so let's look at the definition of design, okay, and design language. Okay, because shape grammar is concerned with creation of new and original design language, okay, or the use of existing design language to create a variety of new design. Okay, I think I believe maybe some of you, because you are, I believe, if not all of you, you are experienced in designing, especially architecture, right? But when you produce a design, that's it. So you only produce one design. So basically, there is no language in that design. Maybe there is a language in that design per se, but then you cannot produce other design using the same language. Okay, so that's what shape grammar can do actually. That cannot be done with the other method of design. Okay. All right, so let's look at the definition of design and design language. Okay, what is design? Okay, these are all definition from the dictionary and some definition that I got online. Okay, so design is the process of envisioning and planning the creation of object. Okay, so there need to be a process in designing. Okay, you cannot simply randomly pick and arrange some elements and call it a design. Okay, so there need to be a process to create a design. Okay, you need to have an idea. Okay, you need to have the process to produce the design. Okay, design is an art with expectations, patterns, and consistency. It is art meeting science. Okay, so if there's no consistency, okay, there's no pattern. For example, like maybe random and abstract works, it cannot be considered as design, but it is just art. Okay, so that's why this shape grammar technique perhaps may not be appropriate for arts, okay, because in arts, especially abstract arts, there's no expectation of I mean the process. For example, like you do this and then you get this, you do this and you get this, things like that. Okay, so in abstract art, basically you can just throw anything and then you call it an art. Okay, so it is not design, it's just art, it's just pure art. Okay, so a design basically need to have the science part of it, which is the process. Okay, the process, the thinking process, planning process, ideation, envisioning process, and so on. Okay, so the designer gets the idea before creating a piece of appealing artwork or a delightful design. But the question is, how do you get ideas, right? Especially for novice designer, okay, newbie designers, right? Maybe like a student in the first year, first semester, okay. So which is new, very new to design. So you don't even know how to get ideas to produce design, okay. So now I'm just going to share how do we normally get idea to produce design. Okay, we are not getting to shape grammar yet. Okay, so this is just the process to get idea that we have used in designing, especially architecture. Okay, especially architecture, but I think the same process might be applicable to other area of design as well. Okay, okay. Before that, let's look at the definition of design language. Right. So design language is basically a scheme or a style that guides a balanced or harmonious design. Right. So the design need to have a certain style, a certain scheme, in order to produce a good design. Okay, perhaps hopefully a balanced and harmonious design. Okay, there should be a scheme or a style that guides the design. Okay, so you don't simply, like I said, you don't simply put things randomly and expect it to become a design. Okay, so there need to be a scheme to it. Sometimes when we say design language, it can also relate to the identity of a designer or a brand. Okay, so for example, like a certain automotive brand has like other identity. Okay, so when you look at the car, for example, so you know this one, this identity belongs to this brand. And you look at that another car, so you know that, oh, so that design belongs to another brand. Okay, so it can be considered as design language as well. In architecture also, you can see design language of especially famous architects. Okay, so for example, if you look at Frank Gehry's work, okay, one of the famous architects is Frank Gehry. So if you look at all the building designed by Frank Gehry, you can see some similarities. Okay, so basically, if you can see that kind of similarity, you can say that there is a certain design language in that design. Okay, but it's not just limited to architecture or automotive. Okay, you can see design language in many other things. Okay, so the first example, maybe you can see the image at the bottom of the slide there. So you can see that the similarity there is a similarity between all the different forklifts. Okay, so those are forklifts, but in different sizes. But you can see that there are some similarities. Okay, at least the color, red color, and there is the black in between in the middle of that black colored part. Sorry, the red colored part. Okay, you can see the black like triangular shape. Okay, in all of the forklifts. Okay, so the design language can be as simple as that, right? But of course, Shape Grammar is not going to produce only that. Okay, but just to give an idea to you what design language is. Okay, and then in patterns. Okay, so previously maybe you can call that an product design, design language in product design. But in pattern design, okay, there is you can see design language in pattern as well, especially if you look at this Islamic patterns. Okay, so these are Islamic patterns. So what can you see from there? What are the underlying design language in those patterns that you can see? Okay, so first, maybe users they all use more or less the same geometry. Okay, perhaps the basic geometry of all the designs are the same. Okay, maybe square shape, right? And so on. Okay, but you can see that's one thing. Another thing, maybe in terms of color. Okay, blue, green, white. Okay, so those can be included. Those can be considered as design language as well. Okay, not just shapes. It can be colors. Okay, and so on. And then again in product, so this is in household products. Okay, design language in household product. Okay, so even though like the first example was the forklift. So all of the example shown, all of the things are forklifts, right? But in this example, basically, these are all different things, okay, different household product. Okay, you can see toaster, you can see coffee maker, you can see yeah, maybe blender, mixer, and so on. Right? But you can see some similarities between all the different products. Okay, because it belongs to the same company, it belongs to the same brand. So that brand basically wants to have the identity, have the same design language in all the household products design. Okay, so what are the similarities? The most obvious, I would say, the color. Okay, so all of them got this maroon color and, with black handle and some white or maybe silver lining. Okay, so things like that. But you can also see the curvy parts, okay, the rounded parts of the object of the products. Okay, so those are the design language as well. And then design language in automotive. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, like certain automotive company, certain brands, they have like this very well-known design language in all of their products, I would say, in all of their cars. So for example, like this Volkswagen Beetle. Okay, so maybe you can consider this as evolution as well. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, the Coke bottle design evolution. So in this case, this Volkswagen Beetle evolution, okay, from the first prototype, okay, in 1935 until today. Okay, I think not sure which one is the latest one. This one, the latest one in this picture is the 2016. Not sure whether there's another latest version, but you can see some similarities between all the different version or all the different era. Okay, for example, like the round headlights. Okay, and then the curvy parts, the bonnet. Okay, the yeah, I don't know what the parts in automotive is called, but you can see some similarities, right, between the first generation and the latest one. Okay, so those can be considered as design language as well. Okay, even though maybe you might call it evolution. Okay. Okay, as I mentioned just now, design language in architecture. So these are buildings designed by Frank Gehry. Okay. So if you look at all the 4 designs, okay, so basically those are 4 different building design. Okay, the Guggenheim Museum, and then the Walt Disney Opera House, and the other 2 I can't remember. But you can see the similarities. Maybe I think the 3 of the designs, you can see the same materials used in the design. But what's more obvious, the similarities in terms of the shape. Okay, so how he twisted and bent the shape to produce the design. Okay, so no other architects actually did this kind of design. So if you see this kind of design anywhere in the world, and then maybe you can easily recognize that, oh, this design belongs to Frank Gehry. So it's the design language of Frank Gehry, right? But I'm not saying that once an architect has a certain design language, he or she won't use other language to produce other design. Okay, so at one time, at any given time, an architect might have a few different design language. Okay, so it depends on what the client wants. Okay, so how do we get ideas? Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, maybe for newbie designers, okay, maybe you're in the first semester or first year of any design course in architecture, or maybe product design, graphic design. Perhaps it has came to your mind maybe once or maybe a few times. How do you get ideas to produce design? Okay. Okay, so now I'm just going to show you some of the method. Okay, ideation method. But it may not be suitable for all fields of design, but definitely I believe all of them can be used in architecture. Okay, maybe some can be used in product design, some can be used in graphic design. Okay, but maybe they cannot be used for all fields of design. Right. Okay, so let's look at the ideation method, I call it. Okay, so the first one is concept keyword. I think this one is not according to order. And then we have metaphor. So I'm going to explain further on each of the method on how to get ideas. And then you have issue or problem based. Okay, so actually design process is a process of is a problem solving process actually. Okay, so I believe this would be the most popular method. Okay, but it can be tricky as well. And then design theory. Okay, some people they like to use design theory to guide the design process. Okay, and just stick to it. It can be just abstract. Okay, earlier I mentioned that maybe abstract arts cannot be considered as design, but abstract here means something else. Okay, so I mean the idea can derive from abstract object, but the process of creating the design still needs it needs a thinking process. Okay, but just the idea is abstract, but the design process is still there. And I like to use this word tiru vasi. Okay, so I think you might understand that tiru is copying. Okay, vasi is derived from innovation. So basically, you copy from other people's work, maybe a famous architect, a famous designer, and then you change a little bit here and there, and then you call it your design. Okay. It's not wrong actually to use that method. Okay, so let's look at the process or the method one by one. Okay, the first one is concept keyword. So I'll try to make it general. so that you can relate to different areas of design. Okay, so in this method, basically we use keywords to guide the design. For example, like fusion. Okay, so fusion basically is a mixture. Okay, if you understand fusion food, meaning that you mix between, I mean, the food is actually a combination between maybe Western and Eastern, so you call it fusion. And then maybe a keyword like transparent. So when you use the keyword transparent, so you imagine that your design has, especially for architecture, so you imagine that the design of your building made with glass all over. Okay, so it is kind of transparent. People can see from outside. People can see what's going on inside, and from inside you can see what's going on the outside. Or unity in diversity, and so on. Okay, just giving some example. Okay, so based on these keywords, especially in architecture, that especially a student, they try to come up with a design that relates to the keyword itself. Okay, so when the lecturer or when other people ask them, okay, what's your design is about, or what's your design concept? So they simply can say, oh, my concept is transparent. So things like that. Okay, so basically design is produced to capture the essence of the keywords. As you can see the example below, I believe it is a design of library, okay, to come up, to derive with the design of the library. So you can use the keywords like books are made from trees. Actually, those are not really keywords, but yeah, you can use trees and books. Basically, books are related to trees, and then you combine the two words together, and then make it as trees born from a book. Okay, so I'm imagining that perhaps the design that will be derived from that concept keywords will be a library with maybe a garden in the middle. Okay, there's a huge garden in the middle of a library. I believe that's the most possible design that you can derive with. Okay. Examples of keywords based on organizing principles. Well, actually, many times when we design something, we are using these organizing principles like linear, repetitive, spiral, okay, to guide the design process. So even in architecture, even in this shape grammar technique, you are going to use these keywords, right? But the process is different. Okay, so what I'm showing now is basically you straight away take the keyword like linear, repetitive, and spiral, and then you design something out of that keyword. Okay, so the result would be something like what I'm showing in the screen. Okay, like maybe painting artworks with that kind of principles. So you can see the one on the right is spiral, and then the one in the middle is repetitive. Okay, and not sure about the one on the left, but maybe repetitive in a sense that repetitive use of triangular shapes and lines, okay, and so on. So in architecture, again in architecture, you can use a keyword like a forest in the airport. So it's quite straightforward. Okay, so you imagine that in your design, there will be a huge garden in the middle of the building. Okay, but that's pretty simple. Okay, how you get ideas to produce your design. Okay, and then another popular method is by using metaphors. Okay, so even famous architects, well-known architects, also use this method. Okay, this ideation method to produce their design. So in this method, basically you use an object, usually natural object, as reference to create the design or the form of the object. Right. So for example, like bird's nest. In this, you can see this in this image, in this slide, the bird's nest stadium, which is derived from the bird's nest. And then maybe there are some popular landmarks in KL. If you know this telecom tower, right, using this bamboo shoot metaphors, and then there are a few other buildings internationally also using this metaphors to come up with the design. Okay, so metaphor. This is an example of a metaphor used in product design. In this case, a design of a trophy. Okay, so you can see how the hands actually holds the what do you call it? Like benih. What was benih in English? And then you put that benih in the case or something. Okay, and sorry. Basically, the main the main parts of the trophy is actually representing the hands. Okay, actually the soil is the middle part. Right? So that's how the design of the trophy came about. Okay, by using that metaphors of two hands holding the soil. Okay, and the benih. So this is the one that I mentioned, Turning Torso Tower, okay, designed by Santiago Calatrava. Okay, so basically before he came up with the design, right? So he sketched how the turning torso looks like. Okay, so the one on the right there, you can see how when you turn your torso, turn your abdomen, and then from there he transform it into a basic form of the tower, and there is the completed Turning Torso Tower. Okay. So it's I would say it's a metaphor. Okay, but usually this metaphor carries some meaning, significant meaning, or some relationship to the maybe to the client that owns the building, or to the history of the place. So things like that. Right? So it is not simply like a random object used as metaphor, but usually it relates to the building itself. Okay, all right. So the next one is issue or problem base, right? So you get ideas based on issue and problem base, which is, as I mentioned, a design process is a design is actually a problem solving process. Okay, so you design something to solve a problem. So definitely it should be an issue or problem base. Okay, but in this case, in this slide, what I meant with this issue or problem base is a design which is solely intended to solve issue or problem without conscious consideration towards the aesthetic. Okay, so you can see the example below. Okay, based on how the building design responds to the site issues, especially in architecture. Okay, so you can see on the left is the bubble diagram. Okay, so bubble diagram of how you respond to the site context, the site issue. So where the views are, the sunrise, sunset, basic things that you consider when you design a building. Okay, but it looks like the end product also is it looks the same. Okay, so this is what I mean. So you take that bubble diagram and then you make it into the design, just like the one on the right. Okay, so the one on the left is definitely is a bubble diagram, it's a planning diagram, but the one on the right, it looks like planning program of the building, but the designer basically make it into a design with curved shapes. Okay, very organic shape of building. which actually derive from the bubble diagram or planning diagram, okay, at first. I'm not saying that any method is better than the other. Okay, so I'm just telling what are the common method that we use to produce design. Okay, and so in this case, I think you know that the name of the car is Smart Fortwo. Okay, Smart Fortwo. What's the producer's name? Can't remember. But the intention of the automotive, the design of the car is to solve, especially the issues of driving in the city. Okay, maybe to resolve the parking issues. Okay, especially to resolve the parking issues. So you can park like this, right? So you don't have to side park. Okay, so you can park as usual. Right? And it can fit in between small spaces between two cars. Okay, but that probably the main intention of this design. But if you get in the car, if you look at maybe if you want luxury, or if you want comfort, okay, in the car, maybe you won't get it because it's very small. But it solves this issue perfectly, okay, parking issue perfectly. And then the bottom there, you can see household design to resolve daily household issue. Okay, this is in product design. You can see the vacuum. Okay, I think if you normally vacuum your house, okay, if you use vacuum in your house, maybe you understand that it's quite difficult because the vacuum sometimes can be quite heavy. So it's quite difficult to bring the vacuum up the stairs, okay, especially ladies. But some brands, they make the design so that it solves that issue. Okay, so it solves the issue of bringing the vacuum cleaner up the stairs, okay, without any hassle. And then another one is the design that resolve the issue of maybe cleaning or vacuuming at the staircase. Okay, so you can easily use that to solve issues of cleaning the staircase. Okay, so basically that's what I meant by issue based. Okay, so the next one is ideas that you get from design theory. So you can get idea from design theory. I'm not really good at this, and perhaps I think the best example that I can show here is this one example. It depends on the theory used in the particular field. Right? Basically, this one, maybe this theory, this golden ratio theory, is quite popular in various fields of art and design. Okay, you can use this in photography, you can use this in maybe graphic arts, and even in architecture. Okay, so the two examples shown here, one is in architecture, another one is in maybe painting. Okay, so how do you actually design the building, okay, or the portrait? You compose the portrait. This is not only for designing, it's also for composition. Okay, so how you compose the building or the painting so that it fits nicely in this golden ratio, right? So the proportion of certain parts of the building, how it relates to the other parts of the building. Okay, same goes to the portrait, right? So the proportion of the overall height of the human figure and how it relates to the smallest unit of the golden ratio. Okay. But today I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to elaborate about all this method. So I'm just going to show you roughly. Okay. All right. So the next one is abstract. Abstract ideas. Okay, design derived from abstract drawing or abstract ideas. Perhaps maybe when you go to visit a site, go somewhere, Okay, and then suddenly you feel that you scribble, and then you feel that, oh, so this that represents your feeling at that time. Okay, so usually it's based on the designer's intuition, feeling or expression towards a particular issue, design problem, site, and so on. Okay, especially for architecture, so the designer or the architect can just sit at the site there and then scribble, imagining that would be the design that will be built on the site. Okay, so for example, like this one is again designed by Frank Gehry. So the initial sketch of the building was on the one on top, and then how it materialized into a building. Okay. Maybe there's a story behind it, but I didn't manage to study what was the explanation behind the sketch. Okay, but it looks quite abstract. But the end product looks more or less the same as the initial sketch. Okay, the abstract sketch of the architect. Okay, sometimes the designer represent the abstract form of a real object. I'm not sure if this is maybe it overlaps between abstract and metaphors. Okay, so in this case, again, designed by Calatrava, okay, Santiago Calatrava. So how the sketch, okay, the abstract drawing of a person holding something there, okay, and materialize into the building. Okay, so basically the person actually is transformed into the structural system of the building, right? So this building is in Valencia, right, in Spain. Okay, another method which I think quite common in especially for architecture students, right? But I'm not saying it's only limited to students. It might be used by architects, working architects as well. What I call as tiru vasi. Yeah? As I mentioned, tiru is copying, okay, and vasi is derived from innovation. So, or maybe you can say that tiru vasi is design inspiration or innovation from previous design. Okay. So it's a design that is inspired by other, and usually it's famous design. So why would you want to copy something which is not famous, right? Okay. So in this example, you can see that the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I'm not sure whether this is true or not, so I'm just giving a example. Okay. So the one on the left is Leaning Tower of Pisa, which I believe initially when it was constructed, it was straight. Okay, it was right up, okay, vertical, and then over time it actually leaning down bit by bit. But the one on the right is the Leaning Tower in Teluk Intan in Perak. Okay, but I'm not sure whether over time it leans bit by bit, or the designer actually intentionally designed it to become a leaning tower in the first place. Okay, I've never been there. Right, I've seen photos of the building, of the tower. Okay. So in logo design, maybe this is more prominent because you can see that so there are so many logos that looks alike, looks more or less the same. Okay, but I'm not saying that they are copying. I'm not really sure that if they are really copying from another brand, but just as a person, okay, as a public, when I look at the between Adidas and Asadi, okay, so I thought that there are some similarities between these two, even though it's just a typeface. Okay, it's a logo type, but you can see the similarity between the logo type, okay, between the typeface. Maybe the difference is just the color. Okay, but they both use the same font type or font style. Okay, and then the bottom one, I think just somebody just made up that thing from Puma to Pumba. Okay, same font type. Okay, but you just add B in the middle, and then you change the logo. That could be the case, real case. I mean, the case in real life. So you can see some designs which bears similarities with other design that is well known. It's quite well known. Okay, so now let's look at the what is shape grammar is all about. Okay. Okay, after 30 minutes, then after almost 40 minutes, then only I want to talk about shape grammar. Okay, so as I mentioned, this method or this technique was created in 1970s. Okay, it's a long time ago. It's already 40 years. Created by George Tainey and James Gibbs in 1972. So they are both, I think initially when they designed, they produced this method. I'm not sure whether they are students or lecturers at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And it is actually a production system in computational design that generate geometric shapes. Okay, maybe some of you wonder what is computational design. Okay, actually it's a quite a famous area now, especially in architecture. Computational design is basically the design which is produced using a computer language. Okay, so it's not like the usual design process where you use your idea to draw, okay, to produce 3D of the design. But in computational design, basically you program in the computer using the computer programming language, and then you expect the computer, maybe when you click a button, you enter, then the computer will generate a design for you, okay, based on the language that you have coded in the computer. Okay, so basically that's computational design. But of course, you need to have some basic knowledge in design, in normal design process, before you can produce this computational design. But the possibilities are limitless. Like I mentioned earlier, in the normal design process, you only design for one object. So once you design for that one object, when you want to create another design, you have to repeat the process again, or maybe you use a different idea, okay, to produce a different design. But in computational design, basically, the possibility of designs can be limitless, using the same language. Okay, so first the computer would generate the first design, and then when you enter again, so the computer would generate a different design for you, okay, using the same language. Okay, so basically this, but what I'm going to share with you today is not related to computer. Okay, even though it is mostly the shape grammar technique is mostly used in computational design using computer, but it can also be used manually. Right, it's not that difficult actually to be used manually. Okay, so why did I share about the ideation process earlier? How you get ideas earlier? Because shape grammar can be used as an alternative to the traditional methods to get design ideas. So if you don't know, or maybe you feel boring, right? You don't know, you don't want to use the same method to get ideas over and over again, or just don't have any idea anymore, then you can use this technique, shape grammar technique, to derive with your design, right? So it's a technique, so it's not really generating idea, but you use the technique to produce a design, okay, replacing the traditional method. Okay, so in short, shape grammar is a set of shape rules that apply in a step-by-step way to generate a set or language of design similar to grammar used in linguistics. Okay, so the gist behind this shape grammar is you are designing using rules, right? So you need to design the rules. So I'm going to show you later, tomorrow lah, basically. Today I'm just going to show a bit, but tomorrow I'm going to show you the process, how you can produce the shape rules, and then how do you apply the shape rules in the step-by-step way in the process to generate a design. Up to you if you want to produce one design, or using the same rules you can produce multiple design. So when you have multiple designs, you can say that all the designs belong to the same language, right? So it's a set of design or set of language. So the design belongs to the same design language. Okay, so this is similar to grammar used in linguistics. Okay, later I'll come to that. I'll explain that. Okay, so this is the original, the first shape grammar produced by Steiny and Gibbs in 1972, where I'm not sure which one is Steiny, which one is Gibbs, but basically this is the idea. I believe they use computer language to produce this, right? But it can be translated into something like this. So you have the basic shape, which is like what shape is this? Okay, this is the basic shape, right? The initial shape or the basic shape, and then from there are some rules. So here you can see rule 1, rule 2, repetitive use of, and then here there's rule 3. So I'm not sure how many rules they have, but by repetitively applying the rules to the shape or to the initial object, okay, you can create a pattern or a design. Okay, so as I mentioned, the first shape grammar was used to produce painting. Okay, so this is the painting that they produce using the first shape grammar, right? But they produce this painting using computational design, meaning that the process was done by computer, and they just program the language, they program the shape grammar in the computer, and then when they click enter, straight away the computer would the program would compute the language and derive with this painting, okay, or this object, and then later I'm not sure whether they straight away colored in computer or later they colored separately. Not really sure about that. Okay, so basically that's the idea. So using the rules to produce design. Okay, so that's basically what shape grammar is all about. Okay, as a good citizen, you have to obey the rules, right? So as a good designer, also you have to obey the rules. No? Okay, so when you produce the rule using this shape grammar method, you need to obey the rules. Then only you will get, I would say, a desirable or good design. Okay, so let's look at the definition of shape and grammar. Okay, why is it called shape grammar? It's basically just a combination between shape and grammar. So let's look at the definition of both shape and grammar. Okay, so shape is actually, I think probably many of us, many of you might think that when you call shape, so you imagine a basic shape, right? Square, rectangular, circle, triangle, pentagon, so things like that. But actually it's more than that. When we say shape, the definition is arrangement of basic geometrical elements in space. It can be 0 dimension, 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension, and so on. Okay, it can be a dot, as simple as a dot. It can be a line. It can be the basic shapes that you know. It can be organic shape. It can also be like 3D shapes, like the cube or cuboid, cylinder, and so on. Okay, any number of lines can be arranged in a way to create a shape. Okay, so it depends on which area of design that you are in. Okay, maybe if you want to produce a pattern design, something like a doodle maybe, but using this shape grammar technique. So perhaps you can use more organic shapes, and then you come up with the rules, shape rules, and you produce design using that shape. Can anyone feedback? Can you hear me clearly? Because it says that my connection is a bit poor.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I believe it's pretty simple, right? It's pretty clear what shape is. So especially for architecture students, if you don't know what shape is all about, then maybe you don't. You better take other course, right? Okay, so in shape grammar, actually, you can use any imaginable shape there is. Okay, any shape that you can imagine, you can use it in this method, this shape grammar method. Okay, now let's look at grammar. Okay, but this definition of grammar is in linguistic. Okay, if you Google or if you look at it in the dictionary, you look for the definition of grammar, you might find this. Okay, so in linguistic, linguistic is actually the study about language. Okay, grammar can be defined as the study or the use of the rules. Okay, see the similarity. Rules about how words change their form and combine with other words to make sentences. Right. So I think from this definition, you can already relate it to shape grammar. So it's about rules, how you change, how words change their form and combine with other words to make sentences. So maybe you are not aware of this. Maybe how you learn language in school is. You were taught differently in school. You were never taught about this grammar in this method. Okay, but if you think carefully, right? So this actually makes sense. Okay, so basically, grammar is sets of rules. Right? How you use that rules to make sentences. So for example, like the first rule is, okay, in bracket sentence, meaning that to create a sentence, you need to combine noun phrase and verb phrase. And then there is a rule specifically for noun phrase. So when you have noun phrase, basically you need to have article and noun. And then when you have verb phrase, you need to have verb and noun phrase. And then there are sub options for the articles, right, depending on what context you are in. The first article is an, second article is the, and then some options for noun, right? The first noun is architect, the second noun is engineer, and then verb, the options that you have. The first verb is met, the second one is suit. Okay, so basically, when you make sentences, you can make sentences using this the rules mentioned here. Okay, so I show you how it goes. Okay, so first, okay, to create the sentence, how I can explain this is a sentence is basically created by combining noun phrase and verb phrase. And then to have that noun phrase and verb phrase, so you need to meet the, you need to follow the rules. No? So you need to combine the article and noun and verb and noun phrase. And then you use maybe just select one of the options that there are. So for article, there are two options. Noun, there are two options. Verb, there are two options. So you choose one from each. Okay, so let's say, for example, the article, you take an. And then noun, The first one you use architect. Then for the verb you use should, and then again article. Then now you use different one, the, and then noun you use the another noun, which is engineer. So the first sentence that you can create using these rules is an architect should the engineer. Okay, so basically it's just following the rules. Right? Grammar is actually how you follow the rules in language. Okay, so let's look at other possible sentences that you can create. Okay, when you change, when you apply the rules, but you change the option. Okay, you can create different sentences. So the first one, other possible sentences. The first one, the engineer met the architect, an architect suit the engineer, the architect met the engineer, and an engineer suit an architect. Okay, so basically, this is what shape grammar is all about. Right? So the main thing in shape grammar is the rules, shape rules. Okay, you need to create rules. It can be just one rule, or it can be a few rules, just like this example here in linguistic. You can have like 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 rules. It can actually can be more than that. You can have more than. I will show you some examples where there were like 50 rules. Even the one that I did for my masters, I can't remember how many rules I used, but yeah, there are a lot actually. But you don't have to go that far to create a good design. Okay, it depends on what you want to use, what you want to produce using the shape grammar. Okay, so it's about following the rules. Okay, following the rules, you apply the rules in the following the steps. So you apply the rule one by one, and then from the list of rules, you can have options, just like this example here. For article, you have 2 options. Noun, you have 2 options. Verb, you have 2 options. So in shape grammar, also the same. You can have like, for example, the first shape, let's say a triangular shape. So you have 2 rules related to triangular shape, maybe 2 rules related to square shape. So when it comes to the application of the rules, application of the shape grammar, you can choose, just like this example of rules in grammar here. So you can choose which rule that you want to use to produce a different kind of design. Okay, understand so far? Okay, so this is the first example of shape grammar, simple example of shape grammar. So in general, shape grammar is a rule or a set of rules that determine how to modify or transform a shape into a new one. Right? So basically just like grammar in language. So how the rules specify what need to be done. Okay, so in this case, the rules specify how you should modify or transform a shape into a new one. Not to say that from triangular it becomes square or rectangular. It can be something else. Right? Transform here doesn't mean that it transform in terms of shape. Okay, so I'll explain maybe tomorrow what transform is about. The rules are applied in a step-by-step way to generate a language of design. Okay, as I mentioned, instead of just creating one design, just like what you did in the traditional design method, you only produce one design and that's it. You can actually use the rules in shape grammar to produce multiple design, okay? A language of design, meaning that using the same rules, using the same language, you can produce a lot of different design. Okay, a designer establishes the shape rules while the rules generate or compute design. So in computational design, this is what I meant earlier. This is what I mentioned earlier in computational design. So basically, the designer or the person who codes the rules in the computer would actually write the rules in a computer language. I'm not sure if any of you familiar or know computer language or not. Maybe I've heard like C++. Okay, when I was a student, when I did my research on this shape grammar, I used MaxScript, which is the computer programming language for 3D Studio Max. Okay, which I actually did compute. I did program. Okay, I programmed the shape grammar using the programming language, and then as I hit the enter button, so the computer actually produced the design for me. Okay, I don't have to arrange or use the rules manually one by one to create design, but instead I just click a button after I program the language in the computer. So I hit the button, and straight away the computer generate few different designs for me. Okay, but as I mentioned, it is not necessarily to only to use computer, okay, to produce the shape grammar. You can also use a manual. Even during my research on shape grammar, at the end of the day, I just use manual shape grammar application because it's actually very difficult to do computer programming language, especially if you don't have the basic, right? And maybe you don't really have that interest in computer programming language. Okay, so don't worry, you can still use manual application, manual framework to produce shape grammar, meaning that you need to draw manually. Manually here doesn't mean like you have to draw using your hand. You can use computer software. You can even use words to draw if you want. You can draw the shape, but what I meant by manual application is so you need to apply the rules. Let's say the rules says, okay, let's go to the rules below. So let's say the rules shows when you have a rectangular shape, right? So you have to create, you have to add another triangular shape, rectangular shape, but in the upright position. So the first one is horizontal, right? Horizontal rectangular. But when you apply the rule, basically the rule specifies that you need to add another rectangular shape, but in the upright position, and you overlap with the initial shape, with the initial rectangular. Okay, so basically the horizontal one on the right hand side, after the arrow, you actually still see the initial rectangular shape. Okay, the one before the transformation, but you add another one. Okay, so you add additional shape on top of the existing shape, so it becomes like that. Right. So the possible designs that you can derive just from these single rules are this. Okay, so I'm just showing you two examples, but actually it can be more than that. So later I would explain further how it becomes like that. Okay, but I'm just gonna explain briefly how it becomes like that. So actually what you see here is when you apply the rule, you only use rectangular shape to produce the design, but as you apply the rule, you add another rectangular shape in a different direction, in a vertical direction, and you can see that there are 4 smaller rectangular shapes formed, right, when you overlap the two big rectangular shape. So there are 4 rectangular shapes, smaller rectangular shapes formed, and you can actually apply the rules again and again to the smaller rectangular shapes. Okay? So that's how the designs came about. Okay, when you apply the rules to the different shapes, to the different parts of the emerging shapes, then you will get different result. Okay, so for example, like but you just keep repeating, keep applying the rules to any matching shape, as long as the shape matches the rules. Matches in the sense that the size, I mean the ratio, the proportion is the same. It's just that the size is different, but the ratio is the same. Then you can apply again and again to all the matching shapes. Okay, but I think I'm gonna explain that further tomorrow. But today, let's just look at the various application of shape grammar. Okay, so in architecture, basically, shape grammar can be used to analyze. It's quite popular. Has been used quite popularly in designing, or in analyzing existing design. Okay, so this is just like what I did for my research in my postgraduate study in my master's. Okay, it has a high potential for postgraduate research. Actually, during the time when I did my master in shape grammar, there's another PhD candidate also under the same supervisor. She actually did shape grammar at PhD level. Okay, so if you are interested to do your PhD or to do another master by research, let's say now you already have master part 2, master of architecture. Maybe you want to do something else, master in by research, or straight away to PhD in architecture. So this could be one of the potential area that you can embark into, right? So it is possibly the best way to learn about styles or language of design. Okay, sometimes when you look at design, maybe it's a bit difficult to decode or decipher what's behind the the design. Okay, so how did the architect or the designer actually or why did the architect or designer arrange the spaces in such manner, this and that. Okay, but using this shape grammar method, probably you would find the answer. Okay. Okay, examples of shape grammar application in architecture, which has been done to analyze the existing design, is the Palladian Villa grammar, shape grammar of Frank Lloyd Wright, Perry houses, the Japanese tea house grammar, the Queen Anne houses grammar, and the shape grammar of Rudinara residence. Basically, that's the one that I did. Okay, the shape grammar of Rudinara residence. The design strategies, in particular grammars, are theories of composition. So it's just theories of composition. So it's just to study how the shapes or the spaces were composed or arranged to create the design, which is not correspond to the historical fact. Because when perhaps, for example, like the Palladian grammar, right? Palladian houses, when the architect Andrea Palladio designed the villa, so probably his intention was something else. Maybe there was a historical fact behind it. But as you analyze all the different houses or the different design by the same architect using the shape grammar method, you can find some similarities behind it. Okay, but the similarities between all of these shape grammars was basically what happened was the researcher who used this shape grammar, he or she actually studied or analyzed several examples of design from the same architect. For example, like this Palladian Villa grammar. Okay, this Palladian Villa grammar. Basically, the researcher took several examples of the existing Palladian villa in different places. Okay, if you look at the images, they all look more or less the same. There are some similarities. Okay, there are porches, there are terrace. The shape of the roof more or less the same. So things like that. So basically, the researcher took this several different design of villa by Andrea Palladio and tried to find the similarities and try to analyze it using the shape grammar method, and he found out that and then he translate the composition of spaces using this shape grammar. And what he derived with the shape grammar is basically first he understands the theory behind the composition of spaces of the Palladio Villa grammar. But what's more important, using this shape grammar method, the researcher basically can use the same language to produce a new design, okay, a new plan or a new design that has not been used or has not been designed by Andrea Palladio himself. Okay, but if you look at the plan or if you look at the design, you can say, oh, this one similar to Palladian Villa, but then it's actually not designed by Andrea Palladio, but it was designed by the researcher using the shape grammar method. Okay, so basically that's how we use shape grammar to analyze existing design. Similar to this one, the Japanese tea room grammar. So basically the researcher took several different examples of the existing Japanese tea room design. Okay, study the similarities of all the different design, okay, in terms of the space arrangement in all the tea room, the Japanese tea room. Find some similarity and then translate that into shape rules. And then using the shape grammar, basically using the shape grammar, the researcher can reproduce the plan, the existing plan, and also to produce new plans which is not available anywhere, which has never been done by any designer. Okay, so basically that's the idea behind this application of shape grammar in especially for research. Okay, but my favorite one is this. Okay, I think especially for architecture students, I think all of you know Frank Lloyd Wright. Okay, one of the master architect. So in this project, in this shape grammar application, basically the researcher took, I remember, I think 10 or not too many, I think about 10 or 11 or 12 houses, which Frank Lloyd Wright himself termed as prairie houses. Okay, so as you know, Frank Lloyd Wright designed so many different buildings, but there are some houses that we call prairie houses. So basically the researcher took this different prairie houses design, okay, and then analyzed the spaces in the houses in terms of the space arrangement. So how did Frank Lloyd Wright arrange this living room? So where did he put the chimney? So things like that, and then come up with this the shape rules, right? And then the shape rules can actually reproduce all the 11 existing design designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. But at the same time, using the shape grammar, the researcher can produce new design, many more new design which has never been designed by Frank Lloyd Wright himself. But if you look at the design, you would say, oh, this one looks similar to prairie houses. It actually carries the same principles, organizing principles, theories with the original prairie houses designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Okay, so that's the idea. Same goes to this another example, Queen Anne houses. Okay, Queen Anne houses grammar. Again, the researcher took several examples, several existing samples of houses in this style. Okay, Queen Anne houses style. I'm not sure where this house, this style belongs. The area that this design style belongs to. But the concept is the same. So the researcher actually analyzed several different design, existing and original design of the Queen Anne houses, and then try to find the similarity, and then he or she translated that into shape rules, and then using the shape rules, using the shape grammar to reproduce the existing design, as well as to create new design which has never been available in anywhere, okay, in the world. Okay, another example of shape grammar. Okay, but tomorrow I'm going to show you that shape grammar can actually it can be performed using single rule or multiple rule. So this is an example of multiple rule shape grammar. This was the research that I did during my master, but it's a bit different from the other researchers, the other projects that I've shown earlier, the Prairie houses, Queen Anne houses, the Japanese tea room. The difference is those projects, in those projects, basically the researcher took several existing design of the building or of the house in the same style. But in my case, there's only one of such building. Okay, there's only one Rodinara residence. I think probably some of you know this building, know this house, located in Bangi, Kajang or Bangi, somewhere there. Which is quite unique. It's a timber, it's a bungalow, a timber house. It's a modern timber bungalow, one of a kind, and it's actually unique in terms of the form. Okay, in terms of the shape, in terms of the form. But there's only one of such. I think it was designed by Jimmy Lim. Okay, but there's only one of such design, especially in Malaysia. So I don't think that there would be a similar design elsewhere in the world. Okay, but what I did was I took this building, I studied, analyzed the plan, analyzed all the components of the building, and then I managed to translate the parts into the rules. I can't remember how many rules. And then using the same rules, I can using the rules, I can recreate this the plan or the shape of this original bungalow, and I can also produce new design which resembles the same design language or design style, but you never find the design anywhere else, right? But when you look at the design, you would notice that, oh, this one looks like Rodinara residence, okay, because it carries the same design language. Okay, so that basically that's the application of shape grammar. That's why we use shape grammar. Okay, so these are the original. This is the original view of the building, and then the one at the bottom there is I made it into 3D drawing. Okay, different angle of the building. Then when these are the plans, the upper ground. Okay, I mean the first floor and the second floor, because the building is actually elevated from the ground. So this is the level 1 and level 2, the original plan of the building, and then you can see the basic drawings, the elevations of the building. Okay. So you can see that the plan or the building was made of arrangement of triangular shapes. Okay, so you can see the position of the columns. So the position of columns, and then yeah. So basically, the intersection between the triangular shapes are where the columns are located. Okay, so you can see that the plans are made of triangular shape, and the basic unit is the A. A is the basic unit, the most basic unit, but in most parts of the building, the unit was combined. Four triangulars combined to become a bigger triangular. Okay, and then after applying the, I came up with the rules. I can't remember, as I mentioned, I can't remember how many rules. I think more than, definitely more than 20, maybe 30 or 50, 50 rules. But you can see these are the rules actually. Okay, I name it as schema. Schema is basically the rules, rule number 1, rule number 2, rule number 3. Okay, it's a bit tedious, maybe because this is a research, master research, so it's a bit tedious. But if you want to apply it to your design, it doesn't have to be this tedious. It's actually can be quite simple and straightforward. Okay, get to that later. So these are the rules on how to create the Rodinara residence. So I actually created many rules. I think in total I have 50. Yeah, I think in total I have 50. So rules to create the basic shape, okay, the basic form of the building, and then there are rules to to put the roof, okay, how to create the roof. It depends on condition, right? So as I mentioned in the earlier example, so you may have several different options. Okay, for example, like to have the roof, to create the roof, you may have several different options. For example, like if when you combine, if you apply the previous rules, and then it happened to be that you got this pentagon or hexagon shape, hexagon shape. Oh, sorry, I think hexagon shape. Then this is how you apply the roof. This is the rule to apply the roof for hexagon shape. But when you apply the previous rules and in the end you got this triangular shape, okay, this is how you apply the rule. So when you apply the rule in the shape grammar process, when you apply the rule, you only choose which rules which is applicable, right? So if you use different rules, you might get different result, right? So maybe in the first design you use this rule, you get this result, and then to create another design for the same shape, but you use different rules, and then you will get different result. Okay. So for corners, how to put roof at the corners. So there are two options. So one is like this, right? And then the one is like this. Right? Basically, the shape is the same, but the rules is different. If this is the shape, then the roof should be like this. If this is the shape where you have like some roof overhang, then this is how you finish the roof, and etc. And then in some areas, if let's say you have stilts, and this is how you apply the roof. But if you don't have stilts, this is how you apply the roof. Okay, and then at the corner, when you combine the shape and then it meets at the corner, so this is how you finish the corner. Yeah, it's actually quite complicated, I would say, but just to show you some example. So in total, I have 50 rules, and I managed to come out with, I can't remember, but I think 39 or more than 39 different designs of Rudinara residence. Okay, the original one, which was built, is only one, which is this one, the number one. Number one is basically the number two. Number two is the origin of the the original Rudinara residence. The original house was built using that basic shape, okay, shape number two. But the other shapes, the other forms are basically the one that I created using the rules. Okay, when using shape grammar, using the rules, when I applied the rules again and again, using different rules for different place, end up I can get like I can't remember, I think 39 or more than 39 different design. But if you look at all those designs, you can see that they all looks more or less similar to the original Rudinara. Okay. So as an architect, I think this is very powerful actually. So you can actually use the same, you create one shape grammar or one or several rules, and then for the first project you apply the rules and then you create this design, and then for the second project you apply the rule in different manner and then you get a different design. Okay, so I think that's the beauty of the shape grammar method. Okay, so you can see the different, and I think you can see like number one, I put origin of new design 1, origin of new design 2. So basically from there, from this basic design, I actually made the detailed design, something like so this is another example, something like this, where I did, I would say this is the case study, okay, of how I show in detail in the research. Basically, I show in detail how I applied the shape rule one by one. From the beginning, from the initial object, which is the triangular, until the completed design. Okay, how I finish the design. So you can see from the triangular, then apply rule number 2, it becomes like this. Apply rule number 3, and you can see that I did not apply the rule according to certain, a sequence. Okay, so not necessarily you have to apply rule number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It doesn't work that way. Okay, you can skip. You can just use rules that you want to use. For example, like the first one, I straight away use rule number 2, and then after that rule number 3, and then I skip to rule number 5, 6, and then skip to 8, and then skip to 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then skip to 17, and then back to 12. Right? So you don't really have to follow the order. Okay, the rules are just there, but when you apply the rule, as long as the shape matches the rule, okay, the shape when you produce the design, when you create the design, in the design process, there is a matching shape, a shape that matches the shape in the rules, then you can apply the rule to the design. Okay. And then I use SketchUp last time to produce a detailed design of the new Rudina house. Okay, as you can see in the detailed design, yeah, it carries the same language as the original Rudina, but yeah, of course you can change to brick. Instead of use timber, you use brick. But what I meant was the form itself. Okay, it actually resembles the original Rudina design. Because it belongs to the same language. Okay, another one that I made the detailed design is something like this. Okay, and then again the same. I show the process. Straight away I use rule number 2, and then number 3, 4, and then straight away to 9, and then 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, and then back to 12. Okay, 19 again. 19, and then 16 again. Okay, so it doesn't have to. You don't have to follow a certain order. Right? And I detail out the design using SketchUp. Okay. Okay, so another area of application, shape grammar application in architecture, which I think is most probably going to be used. It can be used by many of you. If you want to create design, if you're a student, then you can use this method to create design for your design studio project. If you are already working outside, also you can. Doesn't matter. You can, especially in the schematic design phase, right? So you can to come up with the basic idea, rather than try to find your own idea. Then you can try to apply the shape grammar, okay, the rules to create the design. So just now was to analyze existing design and to create new design based on the existing design language. But this one is to apply shape grammar to produce new design straight away. So you don't have to analyze any previous design. So you yourself, you determine the rules, you determine the shape grammar, and then straight away you create your design. Okay. This is so much simpler because you don't have to analyze the existing design. Okay. So there are several examples of shape grammar application in this manner. I think mostly done by students in MIT. I believe they have like certain modules. Last time I used to teach this shape grammar elective module in for the Bachelor of Honours in Architecture, but now no more. Excuse me. Okay, so you can see the examples here of shape grammar application in this manner. So there are only 2 shape rules. Okay, in this example, there are only 2 shape rules. One like bigger triangular, rectangular. Another one is like a stick. It's also a it's actually not a rectangular. It's if you look in 3-dimensional, it's actually like a cuboid, right? It's a cuboid. There are 2 cuboids. One is longer than the other, longer and slimmer compared to the other. But this is how the rules are. Okay, so anything that if let's say you want to transform the bigger cuboid, this is the rule, the first rule. So you need to add the other rectangular, another cuboid on top of, or I think this one is below, below the first shape, and then since you have this shape, the slimmer rectangular shape, so you need to have the rule for that shape as well. because you have two different shapes. So you need to have at least two different rules. So in the design process, basically you can choose to apply the rules to either one of the shapes. Okay, so you can see the process here. This is the first application of the rule. Okay, this is rule number 1, and then I believe the the second image is rule number 2. And then rule number 1 again, number 2. So you can keep alternating the application of rules. Rule number 1, number 2, number 1, number 2, or it doesn't have to be that way actually. It can be like rule number 1, 1, 1, and then move to rule number 2. Okay, as long as there are matching shapes. Right, and then but in this application, basically it's just to get the basic form, form of the building or of the design. But after that, you need to detail out the design manually. Okay, so for example, like maybe the slimmer cuboid rectangular shape becomes like trusses, things like that. So it becomes like this, right? I'm not sure if the two images are showing, I mean the model and the drawing are of the same design, okay, but it is potential to create few designs using the grammar. And then here you can see another example, okay, also done by student, right? But these examples are after the application of the grammar, of the shape grammar. They look more or less the same. If you look at the timber model, okay, the messing model, the messing models, they look more or less the same because they belong to the same design language. But you have different options. By applying the rules differently at different part during the design process, you can come up with different design. Okay, so even the detail model, there are two detail model. There are different designs. If you look carefully, actually, those are two different designs, but they look more or less the same. Just like the case of the Frank Lloyd Wright Prairie houses, they are different designs, but carrying the same language, right? So when you look at the first design, you can see, and then you look at the second design, you can see the similarities. Right? Another example, so the two shape rules, and then apply differently, and then you get like 4 basic design options. Okay, so normally clients, when you work in the industry, basically clients they like to have options. Okay, they don't want you to show only one design, but they would be very happy if you can show different options, especially for their bungalow. Okay. Another example. Yeah, I think this one is only one shape rule, but usually if you use one shape rule, shape grammar with a single rule, the shape would be the same before and after transformation. I mean, the before transformation is just like a single cuboid, and then the rule specifies that the cuboid, that there should be another cuboid attached to the first one, to the previous one, in this manner. So when you produce the design, you keep applying the rule again and again. So that's what you get. You get different possibility, different design. Another example, but this one is after application of the rules, application of the shape grammar. You can see that these are actually 3 different, I believe there are 3 different design, but with the same element, same language. But the designer actually applied the rules in different manner, so the results were different. Another example, okay, so those are 3 different designs produced by the same rules. I'm not sure, I think at least this is a 2 rule shape grammar. Another example, right, but I think maybe there's only one, and there's no option, so this is only one design. Okay, so another example, 2 rule shape grammar, right? but this is also one final design. Okay, but this is what you can do for, especially for architecture. So this is what you can do. You can use the rule to produce the design, but of course later on you need to detail out the spaces. Okay. Okay, now let's look at application of shape grammar in other area. The first one is in product design. Some researchers that have been done, the Chinese Ice-Ray lattice design grammar, Hepplewhite chair back grammar, the Buick, it's an automotive brand, Coca-Cola bottle shape grammar. So the first one is Chinese Ice-Ray lattice design. So basically lattice design can be found on antique Chinese doors and windows. Okay, but again, it's more or less similar to the architecture project shape grammar analysis of architectural designs earlier. But in this case, the researcher basically took several existing design of the Chinese lattice, Ice-Ray lattice design. Okay, so meaning that all the lattice design belongs to the same style, Ice-Ray, okay, Chinese Ice-Ray lattice. So the same style, and then the designer actually analyzed the different design and came up with the rules. These are only some of the rules, and then using the rules, the designer can actually, the researcher or designer can actually reproduce the existing design as well as creating new products or new design, right? Similar to the application in architecture earlier. Okay, same goes to this one, the Hepplewhite chair back design. So basically, this style of furniture was popular in between 1700 to 1800. Okay, and it's named after George Hepplewhite, an English furniture maker. You can see that one characteristic seen in this design is basically the shield-shaped chair back. Okay, so the chair back, you can see the shape of the chair back is in the form of a shield. So basically, the researcher studied all the different designs of this Hepplewhite chair. He studied analyzed the design, and then transform it into rules, shape rules, and then using the rules, basically the researcher can reproduce the existing design, as well as creating new designs which has never been done before. Okay. Okay, similar to this Buick language. Buick is one of the oldest automobile brands in the world. This language was created for because actually you can still see Buick cars nowadays, right? But this shape grammar was done to analyze the cars produced during the after World War II. Between 1940s to 1950s. So only cars during that period, the design of the cars during that period was taken to be analyzed. And the researcher basically found some similarities between the design and then transfer that into shape rules. And using the shape rules, he can recreate the design, existing design, and also to create new design in the same style. Maybe the car manufacturer themselves, Buick themselves, they never design like certain design produced using the shape grammar, but using the shape grammar, it can be done. You can produce new design which has never been done before. So another one is Coca-Cola bottle shape grammar. Okay, Coca-Cola bottle shape grammar. So basically, I think the Coca-Cola bottle, Coca-Cola brand has been around for maybe 100 years, okay, more than 100 years. And the design of the bottles have evolved, okay, between the 100 years. So many different shapes, right? It becomes a like collector item. Okay, so the researcher basically took the different design of different Coca-Cola bottle design, try to find the similarities of the different design, and then transform it into rules. So maybe you can see the rules, some rules related to the, there's an explanation on the left. Some rules used to construct the upper part of the bottle. some rules used to modify the main body, some rules to construct the bottom. So there are a few options for each of the parts, okay, except for maybe few parts. There's no other option. But for example, the construct the upper part, RG2, you can see there are 3 options. So during the application, you can use the designer or the researcher actually use different rule, okay, to produce different result or different design. So as a result, the shape grammar can recreate all the existing design, and at the same time can produce new design, new bottle design, which has never been done, which has never been produced, or maybe never been used by Coke before. Okay, so I think for a brand that really which is particular on the, on the certain design style or language, I think this is very good for them, right? So they can still they can keep using the language, okay, using the design produced by the shape grammar to keep coming up with new bottle design. Okay, which is good for them. Okay, actually, that's all for today. Okay, yeah, I know that I haven't really show you the, give you the details of the shape grammar. Just give you the examples of shape grammar application in different areas. But tomorrow I will cover the more important part. Okay, so how you produce. So tomorrow's title is shape rules and transformation of shape. So how you produce the rules and how do you transform the shape, and there will be an exercise that you need to complete. Okay, so for today, what you need to do after this, because in order for you to get the certificate of completion for this 2-day course, you need to complete all the tasks, you need to watch the video, you need to submit the work. But as long as you submit, okay, you can. Sorry. Okay, so this is the instruction. Given 6 lines. Okay, given 6 lines of the same length. Okay, it doesn't matter how long, right? When you do yourself later, as long as they are on the, more or less the same length. I'm not going to measure anyway. I'm not going to measure the length of the line, but as long as they are more or less the same. Using 6 lines, try to arrange them in certain ways and produce 5 possible shapes or design. Okay, so using only 6 lines, try to produce different shapes. Right? So actually, most of us already know something which is very useful in implementation of shape grammar. Okay, which is organizing principles, right? But I'm not going to elaborate on organizing principles. But when you do this exercise, basically it's about how you apply the organizing principles to create an interesting shape or interesting pattern, okay, using the 6 lines. Okay, you can draw using pen or pencil on paper, or maybe if you know how to use like certain software to draw, you can use any computer software. You can even use words if you want to create the shapes in the lines in words. You want to arrange in words, doesn't matter. But when you submit, you need to submit through times. If you draw on paper, then you need to submit the scanned image or photo of the work. Or if you do it in computer using software, you need to save it in JPEG or PDF format. And then you need to submit your work through the submission link in Times Portal. The link is already there. So I believe you can access the link starting from today. And just a reminder that you are required to complete all activities in order to get the e-certificate of completion and the micro badge. Okay. So tomorrow, the first thing that we're going to do, basically, I'm going to explain on this exercise, right? So I'm going to show some examples and I'm going to elaborate what is it about. Okay, so any question So now I open for question. It's already 10 o'clock, but it's okay. Any question before we end for today?
No.
No question, eh? Okay. Yeah. So you only have 17. Okay, so if there's no question, then I hope you can take just a little bit of your time to complete the ice breaking exercise. Then to upload your work on times, okay, by actually I think the portal would be open to you for, I think maybe my colleague here, Anna or Liana, can advise.
Yeah. The portal will be open until end of this week. So
Oh, only 1 week, is it?
it can be open until 2 weeks.
Okay.
Actually,
So
there's a question in the chat section also.
Oh, okay. Oh, deadline for the assignment. I think just now my colleague already mentioned. The portal will be open for 1 week, at least. So if you can complete within this week, not necessarily tomorrow, as long as you submit, then as long as you complete all the assessment tasks, then you would get the e-certificate. Okay. Okay. Any other question? Okay, I wanted to ask, is shape grammar considered parametric design? Yes, actually it's considered as parametric design, but usually if normally parametric design is associated with computational design, right? Using computer, but it's more complicated. I've never done that before, but I think if you don't have any basic in computational design, like especially if you don't know how to use a programming language or any specialized software on parametric design, then perhaps you can just use the manual application for this shape grammar. Okay, so a simpler one. Basically, what I'm sharing here is the simple application of shape grammar. Right? I'm not going into that parametric design. Okay. Okay, so if there's no other, okay, so my colleague here mentioned that the assignment should be completed by this week, but the module will be open until next week in case you need to download the materials provided. Okay, so yeah, take your time, because actually the task is quite simple. It's quite simple. You can just draw manually. So I'm not sure. I'm not going to grade or anything. So as long as you submit, then yeah, I believe you'll get the certificate and the micro badge. Okay, so if there's nothing else, I guess that's all for today. Hope to see all of you again tomorrow, okay, for the second session. And I hope you can, after this course, you can apply this shape grammar method into your design, in your design process. Okay. Okay, I hope you learned something today. Okay, I hope you enjoy the sharing. Right. See you tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, bye.